All right, so we're back.
Yay.
Now, let's get the show on the road. So we opened up the message board project, and we found that it works. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to modularize this according to how the platform tells us to. Okay. So with the server-side modularization, we're going to go. So we went over the overview. What we have right now is this. What we want to get to is that. So let's take a look at what kind of dependencies we need. And I don't think we need any dependencies at all. So yeah, so there's nothing that you need. Require and module exports. I went through this the first day. So kind of go over what it does is that if you're going to require something, whatever is on the other end of that require, the module exports will be returned and saved in this require line, right? If you don't have a module exports, it'll just go to the file and it's going to run the code and not return anything back, right? So you'll see later on that in the models, in the config, or not the config, but in the models, we're not returning anything, we're not module exporting anything, we're just going to go into that file and then run the code. And that'll do the thing that initializes all the stuff that we need, all right? But if you do want to return something, you use the module.exports equals, and whatever is equals, it'll just spit that thing back, okay? So let's take a look at the before. Routes. Come on. No, don't do this. Not like this. Is that from the Matrix?
Yeah.
Not like this. Come on, man. What's going on? Yeah, well, while we're waiting for that, why don't we just go ahead and make the folders?
Yeah.
Right, so we have our modularized message board. Up here, we're going to right-click on it. We're going to create a new folder. We're going to call it server. We're going to do the same thing, and we're going to create a client one. New folder. Client. In the server folder, we're going to have, well, to start out with, we have a views folder, and we're going to put it in the clients folder, but we also need a static inside of this client folder. So we're going to make a static. In the static, we're going to have the views. We're just going to drag that over. So the static folder now contains the views, which contains the index EJS. In our server folder, we're going to need a config. We're going to need a controller and a model folder. Okay. Controller, folder, models. So this guy should be controllers with an S. Cool. So I think that's That's good. That's all we need. In the config folder, we're going to make a new file, and it's going to be called mongoose.js. That's where we're configuring the mongoose. We're going to also create a routes.js in the config folder. So new file, routes.js. In the controllers, we're going to have a new file that's called the message controller, or messages with the S. That's the convention, or .js. Forgot to add .js. Messages.js. In the models, we're going to have a message.js. Good idea. So we're going to have a new file here too with a comment.js. In the model, it's singular. In the controllers, it's going to be plural. So new file, comments.js. Okay, so we have all our files here, and now our job is kind of just fill these up and divide up all of this stuff here into those different files, right? So the first one is going to be routes, right? So if we take a look at, all the code here on the routes, we're gonna, the goal here is to spot what kind of things that are dependent on other code in the server.js, right? Because if we separate all this code out, that's great, but we might not be able to use it if it's missing something from the server.js, okay? So seeing as we don't have internet, I'm gonna try my best to do this from memory, all right? So copy all of this stuff, starting from, well, I'm not gonna get rid of this part, but I'm gonna start from here, and I'm gonna copy all of this, Command X. I'm gonna go over to my routes.js. I'm gonna paste it in there. So it's all there, right? Now, we need to have the routes files on the server.js. We need to have it visible here. So we're gonna have to do the require, right? And we're gonna have to module export those routes. So it lives on the server.js, even though we're separating it. So we're gonna have to do, say, require, and this is where the path is for your routes.js. So require by default looks for stuff in your node modules folder. Now, if we don't want it to look in the node modules folder, this is the kind of structure we're looking at. Right now, we're in the server.js. We want it to go to the client, or not client, but the server config routes.js. So, the path for that is // That means in my current directory, I want to go to server /config /routes.js, like that. And it's going to require this file. Now, I can save it in the variable if I want, but I don't really need to use that. So I don't need to make a variable for it. It's just going to be required, and just it's as if the code that module exports was pasted right here. So that's what we had before, right? So that we're going to need. And we're going to have to module exports all of this stuff, right? But before we do that, before we do the module.exports equals, I cannot just export all of this stuff. I need to kind of wrap it up into, in an object or a function, right? So if I'm just using the objects, then I can, make it an object. But in this case, I'm going to need some kind of a variable from the server to be available in here, and that's the app, right? Without app, you cannot make any of this routes. So how do I pass, a variable into a function? I'm making an argument. right? So the module exports is gonna, it's gonna export this function here. This guy will go inside of the module exports, and now it has the app. Given that I pass it in when I call it, when I run this, like that. See? So this part. Is
there another way to module export the document?
So let me kind of clarify. Okay. So this line here, that is going to get replaced with a thing that I module exports. Okay. So in this case, I am module exporting this function here, from here to here. This highlighted part is the part that will get replaced in here, right? Because it's a function, I can run the function. I'm running the function now, and I'm giving it this argument, which is something that I made right here. Okay, so it has access to it when I run it, right? And that's all I'm doing. I'm just exporting a function, and I'm calling the function, passing in the argument while I'm running it. Now, in addition to the app, what else does my routes.js need, right? So it looks like that I need Mongoose. If I don't have Mongoose here, none of this stuff works. So I'm going to go to my server.js, and I'm going to require Mongoose, this line here. Put it in the routes.js so it has Mongoose. Now, if I run this, it should work, right? Unless I'm mistaken. But let me run this guy again, restart, and refresh. Message is not defined. Oh, okay, yeah. So another thing I need to do is give it this message variable from the model, right? Otherwise it doesn't know what it is. So every time you kind of use like a variable, you need to give it a definition. So in our server.js, in our database section, we had this var message equals mongoose model message. And this guy is going to be in our routes.js because that's the only place where we use it. Okay? So if we save this in our routes, now we have all the things that we need, right? So we're going to restart it, and we're going to refresh. Failed to look up, views index in the views directory, right? So because we changed our directory for this views, we have to tell it where it is when we're doing the static thing. So before it was all in the same kind of directory, now it's divided up into folders, so we need to tell it where to find this. Right, so static is still static. The views, it's going to be in the static folder in the, let me see, views is still views. We're going to put client in front of here. So it knows where it is. Because client is the one that we added.
To put line
yes,
static.
Yes. Good catch. That is the correct path. So now we start this. Index views directory. Got the join done.
Yeah, right there.
Oh. Here we go. Sweet. So it works. So if we add another message, boom, the routes work. Okay, so we just, in effect, we divided up this routes section, and now all there is just this line. All right. So the next step is to get these routes, the functionality of these routes, into our controller file. Okay. So we have our messages.js. And this guy is our controller file. So in our messages.js, we're going to module exports we're going to export an object. Okay? And in my routes, I'm going to require that object. I'm going to say here, require controller methods. Create a variable, call it messages. That's a good name, right? Messages, and we're gonna call this guy require. The path is going to be, so right now we're in the routes. In order to get from the routes to this messages.js, we need to go back one directory. So we're in the config folder, we'll go back, we're in the server now, and in the server we're gonna go to controllers / messages.js. So we have required this guy. Now, to see that it's working, I can do console log messages. And in here, it's going to be an empty object, right? So if the server restarts, you see that it printed out that empty object. So I know that it's working correctly, right? So here we're going to divvy up these functionalities, and we're going to put it in this controller, right? So really, it's just an object filled with a bunch of methods, right? So how do I make a method? I got to give it a name, right? So in this case, what do I want to name it for this guy? It's going to be get find all messages and render the index page, right? So put that here. I'm going to name it show all. Okay. This guy is going to have a function attached to it, right? And the function is going to be this function here. This function that I'm running, right? So Command X, Command Paste, and there you go. That's the method, right? So I don't need this comment after all. It's already inside of that code. So this guy is now a method that I can call because it is exported out. So it's called show all. So now in my routes, right here, if I want to run that function, I just do messages dot show all, like that, right? So it's the exact same thing. I'm just modularizing it, right? So the same convention goes for these two guys. So add a message, right? We can name that add message, and the function you're going to hold on to is this callback here. Command X, paste, save. Go over here. We're going to name it messages dot new, was it? Add message there. Run the function. There you go, close that up. So when the route hits this guy, it's going to run that function. And I have it available to me because I exported it up here, right? So you're going to do the same thing with the comments, but because comments is in its own, its other controller file, I'm just going to simply copy this part, and I'm just going to paste down here, and we're going to make it comments.js. Comments.js. And we're going to name this comments. Okay. So in our comments.js, we're going to do the same thing. Module.exports equals to object. And the only thing here is create a comment, right? So it's going to be add comment, and you are going to hold on to this callback here. Command X, we're going to paste it right here. And that's the only method that you have, So in the routes, it's going to be comments dot add comment, like that. Okay. So now our routes looks very clean. All right. So we got our get routes, we got our post routes. How neat is that? So everything should work. Crap. Message is not defined. It's in the controllers messages.js. Oh, okay. So in our controller messages.js, message here is not defined. So instead of making this variable here, I'm now, before I was using it in the routes.js, now I'm using it in the messages.js. So I'm just going to copy this and give it to the messages.js because that's what you're using, right? And in the comments.js, you're using this message as well. And you're also using comment.
So we don't need to leave it in the routes.js?
Nope.
We can move it completely?
Yes, because you're not using it here in the routes.js.
Okay.
So you also need, for the comments.js, you need the var comment, this guy. So see how we don't need it in the server.js anymore, because as long as we have it in the other files, it's going to get required into the server.js. So it's going to be there at the end, right? So comments.js, I need this guy as well. Let's see. Mongoose is not defined. We're going to have to require mongoose as well in here. Copy. Require mongoose. Require mongoose. So this guy is needed. This is mongoose. We need to require mongoose and make the variable before we can use that, because that's what's crashing our thing. So now in the routes.js, we can look. We can see, are we using mongoose anywhere here? It doesn't look like we are, right? So we can get rid of that. So here, let's see. Route.get requires callback functions to get find route.js line 15. Oh, okay, so this needs to be in a callback function. It needs to be a function that runs that function, right? So it's going to be function, that's the callback function. It's by definition, these mongoose routes require a callback function, that's why. So then I'll run this function here in the callback. So that would work, okay? Function, that's the callback. And I'm going to move this guy in here. I'm going to do the same thing. So this is good. We're making some mistakes here, right? It's like a real world kind of scenario. And we're reading the error messages to see what was the problem, right? So now, missing after argument, routes.js 17. Yeah. See, maybe I did this on purpose to debug it, right? It's all part of the plan, right? So now it's working. If we refresh the page, oops, something crashed. Cannot read property render of undefined.
You didn't pass the response in your question.
Ah, there you go. See, in our, here we have these variables that we're using, but when I run the show all method, I'm not giving it these arguments. So in the routes, when I run it, and it's over here as well, because by definition, the callback will take in those arguments. And we're passing those arguments over to our method and the controller that we're running. There we go. Yeah. Sweet, everything works. So we're just about like 80% done with it, right? The next step is to get this model stuff inside of our database, right? Now, before I can do that, I need to set up the config file. And the config file is, there's a part in the platform where they kind of give you that code, and it does a bunch of stuff. It kind of explains how it does it, but that file, it's not going to change. Sweet. So we have internet, MongoDB, server-side modularization, models. So this is going to be our mongoose.js file. And we're just going to copy all this code into our config file, mongoose.js, which is here, right? So they kind of give you the comments, they break it down. We're going to require mongoose. We're going to run, we're going to create this variable for the file, file server, the path. We're going to require those modules. We're going to connect to our database, and this database is the one that holds your data. So what do we have in our server.js? We have message board Jan 17, right? So that's what I'm going to use in here because I want it to be consistent, right? I don't want to lose the data that I got. So because I'm requiring this, I'm connecting Mongoose over here, I can get rid of this line here in the server.js because I'm not using that anymore, right? But something I am going to do is I'm going to have to figure out a way to run this code. Because if I don't, notice that there are no module exports, but I want to run the code anyways. So I'm just going to require this file in the server.js, right? So require, it's going to be my directory. I'm going to go to server /config /mongoose.js. And it'll just run the thing inside of this file without returning anything back, which is what I wanted to do when the server starts, right? So we're here, we're doing this, we're joining the models so that, in our model file, any model that we have will get created, will get made, right? So once we have this set up, we can go back, and the final step is exporting this stuff, right? So we're going to put this, we're going to cut this, and we're going to go to our message.js. We're going to paste it in. And this is a config thing, so I'm going to move this to the config file here. And notice I'm putting it after this bar mongoose because I'm using mongoose, that variable here, right? So in my message.js, yes, I'm creating the schema here. I want to separate this comment schema and put it in my comment schema here. So, like so. So in our mongoose.js, we had this crazy kind of like function here for each function. What it does is it goes into your models folder and it looks for all of the files in there, and it'll just require each of them. If you have like 100, it'll do 100. So you don't have to like manually type anything in. It's just like an algorithm that helps you do that. This guy is not going to change so long as you use this kind of formatting, right? So cool. It looks like all we have here now left is that app.listen. It all fits on one page. From beginning, line 1 to line 34, that's all we have in our server.js. Now, let's see what's wrong here. Mongoose is not defined. Yeah, see, that's always going to be a problem. So we're going to go to our message, give it this mongoose variable, go to our comment, give it this mongoose variable. Now everything's looking good. So if we go back, refresh, sweet. You know, everything's working perfectly fine, and you're done with the assignment, right? So that took us about half an hour, right? Maybe 45 minutes. That's how you, basically that's the entire chapter. That's what they do. That's all the code can be found here, or you can just look at this video later to do it. But final touches is just like, you know, it's telling you to change this views one, which we did before because it was broken. And then after, it's just kind of the last thoughts, how you're going to organize stuff. Now, that is this assignment here. Let's take a look at 1955 API, all right? Now, what this assignment is telling you to do is you're making a node backend connected to a database that holds onto some objects with a name attribute, right? And you're going to interface with your backend using the URL line, which will allow you to send GET requests, right? So the URL, if I type something in the URL here, when I press enter, it's going to send the GET request to the backend, to the route, right? So notice that you cannot send post requests through the URL. The URL sends it because it's the browser that has that functionality that's doing it for you, right? So we don't need any front end per se. We can just render this data, right? So basically that's like what I mentioned earlier. When you're in the first request, you're sending back some files and you're displaying those files. The subsequent request, you're using Ajax and you're getting data. And this is what it's trying to simulate. You're sending a request and you're getting back JSON data. And that's it. You know, it says 2 to 3 hours. I want to see if I can do this in 15 minutes, right? So,
Nice.
yeah. So let's go ahead, close this guy. We're going to go ahead and close this guy. We're going to leave the mongod on. We're going to make a copy of this modular message board demo. So it's the exact same code. And I'm going to name this guy 1955 API demo, like that. I'm going to open up this guy. Oops. Whoa, I didn't know you can drag this. That's crazy. So I'm going to run it. Node mon. Sweet. So everything should be the same, but now I'm dealing with this file here, right? Still localhost 8000, still the same data. Okay. Now we're gonna close that. We're gonna open this file, Adam dot. All right, so we're gonna have to do some housekeeping here, right? So a lot of this is gonna remain the same. The thing that is gonna be different here in the server.js, and let's just go through these files one by one, right? So we're still gonna need all this stuff. We're not gonna need this guy. We're gonna change the body parser to become JSON, and in the platform they give you that code. App.use body parser JSON, like that. So we're gonna copy that. We're just gonna replace this line here with that. So we got our static, our views, good. Still using EJS. This doesn't matter, but we're just gonna keep it like it is, and all of these files are just kind of requiring the other files. So server.js is good. So in our client static views, we have the index.ejs, but you know we're not gonna use it, right? So we can delete this if we wanted to, but we're just gonna leave it there for now. Okay. Node modules, same thing. server.js. This is the part we're gonna edit stuff, right? So first thing you want to start with is your config. Config mongoose. I don't want this guy to be this database. I want to change it to some other database. So I'm going to make a new database called 1955 API underscore demo. That's going to be the database that will get created when I first make some kind of action to save something. Okay. Everything else is the same. Done with this guy. Now, the models no longer need a comment.js, so I'm going to delete this, move to trash. In my routes, I'm only going to have, let's see, in the controllers for the comments, I'm not going to need this guy, so we're just getting rid of all the comment stuff because we don't need the comment stuff, right? So I'm going to get rid of this. So we only want one file in each of these guys. So the comments, that we don't need anymore. In our models, we're going to rename this guy to be names. Names.ejs, but because it's a model, we're going to make it singular. Right? Name. In the controller, we're going to rename this guy names, plural, right? In the routes, we're going to require names from the controllers, and in the controllers, we're going to require this. We're going to change later. So now, let's go ahead and edit the schema. We're going to require mongoose. We still need that. We're still going to need this variable here. We're going to change this to name schema. New mongoose schema, name, type string, required true. Good. That's all we need. We don't need anything else. Timestamps true. You know, we could have it, but we don't need to. The API doesn't require us to have timestamps. So that is all we need for the model. Mongoose model, I'm going to name this name, and it's going to be name schema. Get rid of this stuff. Get rid of this stuff. That's good. We've taken care of that. Go into the controllers. We're going to do some housekeeping here. We're going to name this name, and it's from the model name, right? Module exports. Now, this is the part where it has these functionalities, right? So, you know, I'm going to comment this stuff out for now because we don't know what we need yet, right? Depending on how the question is defined, we're going to do the methods here. But so far, this should work. We're going to go into the routes, and we are going to, we're going to require the controller method, and then we're going to set our routes, okay? So when we go to the index, right now it's trying to show you messages.showAll, but we changed the name here, so we can call this names. And also, you know, we're going to run the method showAll, but it's going to be names like that. And we can kind of comment that out because we're not going to need it right now. Just start from the beginning. Names.showAll. In our names controller, we're going to have a showAll method, just like that. So it's going to be, you know, we can just type this out. ShowAll, you are going to be a function that takes in a request and a response, and you are going to render some JSON, right? So instead of doing here, we can copy this. We're just going to put it in here. We're going to uncomment this stuff, and we're going to change it. Find all messages and render index page. We're going to find all names and render nothing. We're going to return, respond with JSON. Okay, so we have name here, so we're going to do name dot find. No need to do populate. No need to do the execute. So it's just find this all, and then the callback function, like that. So name.find function error data. If I get some errors, I'm going to say, console log you messed up, or else I'm going to console log this data in my terminal, and I'm going to res, not res.render, I'm going to do res.json, and I'm going to spit back this data. All right? So that should take care of that. Show all. Now, if I go to this page now, see if the server is still running, sweet. If I refresh it, it's an empty array, right? Because when I went to this database and looked for name.find all, there are no names in the database right now, so it's going to return an array. Now, whenever you have find, it's always going to return you back an array, even if there's no entries. When you do find one, it's going to return you back one object, right? Something to take note. So now, we just completed this first part here, right? So the next part is adding something, right? So when we go to the get route /new/name, we want to add the param to this database. And what is it we're going to do? So we add a name to database, and you allow blank spaces. So adding Steve Jobs will give you this, Steve Jobs. Cool. And we'll just redirect you back to the index after you've added it, right? So let's go ahead and build that route. So in the routes.js, I'm going to have the app.get, and these are all GET requests. And the route is going to be new, and then it's going to be the name, like that. Okay? So this guy, the first argument is the route. The second argument is the callback function, rec response. And in here, we're going to make a method to handle that. So we're going to say names. I'm going to write it here first, and then I'll make it in the other file. So add name, like that, rec response. And here in my controller, I'm going to go ahead and add that method. So it's going to be add name, and you are going to be this function here, rec res, and you're going to run this thing inside of the function. So what do I want to do, right? Because I'm passing something through this, param here, I can get that from the rec.params.name. Okay, so I'm going to create a new, let's say, variable. Let's call it name equals to new name. In here, the name attribute is going to be rec.params.name. Okay, so once I make that, I can go ahead and try to save it. Right? That's how you add something into the database. So name.save. This is going to take in callback function with the errors, or with errors. So just tell you if you saved it or not. So if error, I'm going to console log there's an error when saving. Else, I'm going to res.redirect to this index page, like that. Okay, so this is my save function, and that should work. All right, and when I redirect back to the index, it's just going to go get all the names and res.json those names. Question?
What does that error look like if you get it?
It's going to be an object with some error codes in it, and maybe like some. It's going to be the same thing that you see like when there's like some kind of error here in terminal. It's just an object, right? So you can read the documentation and it'll tell you exactly what's in there. Right? But sometimes it'll be useful to kind of dig into that and like pick out the thing that is the error, and maybe you want to like send that over to your client to let them know, hey, this is the error. Right?
That would be like passing.
Yeah, you can just pass that variable.
Well, like if you had spelled like params wrong, that would throw that error.
It could. I mean, if I have a model with a name and the name is required, if I don't give it the name, it'll give me an error. Say, can't save it. You didn't pass the validations, right? So, and in that error object somewhere, it'll alert you to say that this validation was not passed. That's why there's an error. Now, if there are no errors, this will be just undefined, and then this will not trigger, so you'll do the else, right? So fingers crossed here. See, if we wanted to add, say, new Steve Jobs. Yay, it worked. So I added Steve Jobs in my database, and it redirected me to index, and now it shows Steve Jobs. Okay, so what else does it? Who else is it? Bill Gates. So we're just making the request through the URL. New Bill Gates, and boom, we got these two objects. So we can add more people if we wanted to. New Bill Nye. Yeah, so our API works, right? So what's the next step now? So we did this. We're going to remove a name, right? Delete a name from the database when we type in remove instead of new. So go ahead and make that route. See? Route.js. We're just going to copy this because we're lazy. Going to paste in here. We're going to change this to remove. And here we're going to change this to remove name. Okay. Now in our names.js, we're just going to add that method here. So we're going to copy, and we're going to make this remove name. And here we're going to remove a name, right? So how do we, what is the syntax for removing names? Let's take a look. So when we go to Mongoose section, I'm pretty sure there's one called Mongoose commands. And down here, user.remove ID, some function error. Cool. So it's just this. We're going to do name, capital name, dot remove. The first argument is going to be what we're going to search for. The second argument is going to be a function that takes in error argument. So let's take a look at what we want to put in here. We want to delete the entry with the name of the param name that was passed in. So look at that. Name. That is the property. And the thing that we want to put in here is, what is it? Name. So we're going to search our database for this entry, and we're going to remove it. If there's an error, we're going to console log there was an error, or else we're going to redirect. So like that. There's an error when removing. Okay, and then we're going to redirect to the root, and everything should work perfectly fine. So let's take a look. Let's get rid of Bill Nye. Boom, Bill Nye was deleted. Right? Pretty straightforward. Now, the last thing we want to do is we want to go to / some name. We're going to bring up a document of that particular name, that person. Okay? So same as before, we just make a route. Copy this one here. It's going to put it down here. We're going to call this name. We're going to say show 1. Okay, names.show1. So in our routes, in our controller, we're just gonna, instead of show all, we're gonna copy this guy, and it's exactly kind of the same code. So we're gonna make a comma here, add this method, and it's gonna be show1, name.find1, and now we're looking for one thing, and that is the name. We're searching it by name, and the name is gonna be, what is it? Yeah, rec.params.name, because that is the thing I named it. So if I named it in the routes something different, like this with 2 E's, all I have to do is just change this to 2 E's, and it'll still work, right? Because that is just the name that you gave it in when you define the route. So I'm finding one, and I'm just resing the JSON of that data, that one entry, right? So let's take a look. I got 2 names here. If I only want Steve Jobs, boom, Steve Jobs. All right? So what was that, like 20 minutes? You know, maybe went a little over time, but it's pretty straightforward, right? Now, yeah, that's it. That's it for this assignment. So questions? See, this recording has gone on for 51 minutes already. So it's under an hour for both of these demos. Not too bad. All right? Any questions? No? All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.